There's a powerful truth that most people go their whole lives without learning. Not every accusation requires a response. Sometimes when you defend yourself, it doesn't build you up. It actually makes you appear smaller to those who were never genuinely seeking the truth anyway. The longer you spend explaining yourself to the wrong people, the more power you willingly hand over to them. Real confidence understands that sometimes silence delivers your strongest message. Here are 10 situations where defending yourself is simply throwing your energy away. 1. When someone has already decided to misunderstand you. There's this unique frustration that builds when you're trying to explain yourself to somebody who made up their mind not to get it. You speak calmly. You pick your words with care. You might even rephrase things multiple ways, hoping that finally, just maybe, something will click. But instead of understanding, the conversation just gets more tangled. They twist your language. They challenge your motives. And somehow, the harder you try to explain, the more guilty you begin to appear. This happens because certain people aren't really listening to understand you. They're just gathering evidence to support the version of you they've already constructed. When someone becomes truly committed to misunderstanding you, logic becomes meaningless. Facts stop carrying any weight. Even your tone, your gestures, and your genuine sincerity stop registering. They're not hunting for truth. They're hunting for proof that their assumptions were right. It's like attempting to prove the sky is blue to someone wearing glasses that change everything to red. No matter how passionately you make your case, no matter how clearly you gesture upward, they'll keep seeing red. Eventually you might start doubting yourself. You'll wonder if maybe the sky really is purple, or perhaps you just didn't communicate well enough. But the issue was never the sky, and it was never your explanation. The issue was the glasses they decided to wear. People committed to misunderstanding you often have hidden agendas. Sometimes they just need to be right. Sometimes they need to hold on to control. Sometimes their ego needs protecting, and admitting fault would feel like losing power. So instead, they manipulate your words, dismiss your reasoning, and keep control of the story. Watch for patterns with these individuals. Every time you clarify, they shift expectations. If you say that's not what I intended, they'll respond with, well, that's how it came across. If you explain your real purpose, they'll say intentions are irrelevant. If you demonstrate your point, they'll drag up something from the past that has nothing to do with anything. You end up in an endless loop where resolution keeps slipping away. Here's what makes it dangerous. The more energy you pour into defending yourself, the deeper you sink into their game. You start explaining too much. You begin defending every tiny choice. You write whole paragraphs just hoping to be heard. And while you're doing that, you're quietly handing them control over your inner peace. Because now your emotional well-being depends on whether they choose to understand you. And they've already decided they won't. There's something powerful about recognizing this exact moment. It's when you understand that this conversation was never about truth. It was about control. And the second you see that clearly, something changes inside. You stop trying to win something that was never designed to be fair. You stop performing for someone who already lowered the curtain. Instead of endlessly defending yourself, you choose silence, distance, or a simple steady statement of your reality. Because not every misunderstanding needs correcting. Some misunderstandings are deliberate. When someone chooses to misunderstand you, no explanation you offer will satisfy them. They don't want understanding. They want their beliefs confirmed. Example: picture a coworker convinced you're stealing credit for their contributions. Actually, you just mentioned the project during a meeting when your manager specifically asked about it. Later, this coworker angrily confronts you. You stay calm and explain, I wasn't trying to take credit. I simply answered what I was asked, but they fire back, no, you were making yourself look good. You try again, I actually mentioned your contribution too. They respond, only after talking about yourself first. You pull up the meeting notes showing their name clearly listed. Instead of acknowledging it, they say, well, you still framed it like most of the work was yours. At this point, it becomes obvious they're not seeking understanding. They're protecting their belief. No amount of explaining will change that. This is when defending yourself stops being useful. You've been honest. You've clarified what happened. You've shown proof. Anything more isn't about solving anything. It's about exhausting yourself. Sometimes the strongest move isn't more explanation. It's a calm, clear boundary. I've told you my side. If you still feel that way, there's nothing else to add. Then you let your behavior do the talking. Because when someone insists on misunderstanding you, protecting your peace matters more than winning their approval. 2. When provocation is the only goal. Not everything someone says to you is an invitation to dialogue. Some statements are deliberately designed to trigger a response. Certain individuals don't speak to share meaning or seek understanding. They speak to push your buttons. Their words aren't vehicles for truth, clarity, or honest disagreement. They're tools, whether conscious or not, intended to provoke you. When you defend yourself in that scenario, you've handed them exactly what they were after. Provocation works like emotional bait. It's a lure cast into the water, waiting for you to strike. The objective isn't mutual understanding. The objective is your reaction, your anger, your frustration, your defensive posture. Because once emotions take over, everything shifts. Suddenly the focus moves from what was said to how you responded. Now you're the one appearing aggressive, unstable, or dramatic. And they get to lean back and declare, see, that proves my point exactly. People who provoke often depend on emotional responses for fuel. Sometimes it comes from insecurity. Sometimes it's attention-seeking. Others find that creating chaos gives them an odd sense of power. When they can control your emotional state, they feel in charge. Nothing satisfies them more than watching you lose your composure. Consider this. When someone tosses a rock into still water, the ripples are the only proof it worked. If the surface remains undisturbed, the rock's impact disappears. Similarly, provocation only succeeds when you respond. No reaction means nothing was gained. But here's where many people get caught. When you're insulted or accused unfairly, your reflexes kick in wanting to protect yourself. You want to fix the falsehood. You want to demonstrate they're wrong. You want to defend your image. That instinct is completely natural. But when the situation exists purely to provoke, defending yourself is like fighting fire with fuel. The more you throw at it, the more it spreads. Provocateurs don't care about your reasoning. They care about your emotional response. You could deliver the most logical, measured, perfectly structured reply and they'll still find ways to distort it. They might cut you off, mimic your delivery, or reframe the same attack differently. Know why? Because keeping the argument going is their victory. Watch for the pattern. They'll make a slightly sharp comment, then watch. If you don't react, they'll turn it up. If you respond, they'll amplify. If you defend, they'll call you oversensitive. It's a loop built to keep you emotionally engaged. The more you defend, the further you step into their space. You start justifying things you'd normally never explain. You begin defending parts of your life that are none of their concern. Your speech accelerates, your thinking blurs, and your emotions take charge. And through it all, they're watching, pleased, because the response they wanted is playing out exactly as planned. What truly shifts power in these moments isn't a brilliant comeback. It's not an elaborate explanation. It's staying emotionally neutral. It's hearing something inflammatory and staying completely unmoved. That silence, that steadiness, that refusal to engage, it baffles people who anticipated a reaction. Because when you decline to respond, you interrupt the pattern. The hook finds nothing to catch. The fire finds nothing to consume. The rock creates no disturbance. Then something interesting emerges from your refusal to defend against provocation. The person either loses interest or their true nature becomes visible. Without your emotional energy to sustain them, their behavior becomes clearer to everyone else. People start noticing who's actually generating the tension. In these situations, silence isn't weakness. It's strategic. It's self-mastery. It's the quiet assurance of someone who refuses emotional manipulation. Example: picture a family event where a relative who thrives on stirring things up announces loudly, "So, still bouncing between jobs. Finally found something stable yet." The delivery isn't curious. It's cutting. It's meant to embarrass you. If you bite, you might snap back defensively. "I'm not bouncing anywhere. I'm exploring different paths. At least I'm not stuck in some dead-end thing forever." Now tension escalates, voices sharpen. Other relatives start watching. What began as a simple comment morphs into a full confrontation. And the person who started it settles back, satisfied. Their job is finished. But picture handling it differently. You smile easily and respond, "I'm figuring out what fits for me right now." Then you redirect or walk off. No fight, no emotional response, no defense, just calm presence. Right there, the provocation loses all its force. There's no drama to sustain, no reaction to amplify. The hook drops back uselessly. That's the insight. When something exists purely to provoke you, your defense becomes their reward. Your quiet composure, however, becomes your freedom. 3. When relationships have passed the point of repair. There comes a stage in certain relationships where the bond isn't just damaged, it's completely broken. Trust has evaporated. Respect is fading. Communication feels like navigating through broken glass barefoot. Every exchange ends in conflict. Every explanation fuels another disagreement. And every effort to mend things somehow makes them worse. Yet people persist in defending themselves within these dynamics. They keep offering explanations, apologies, clarifications, and justifications, hoping that one perfectly crafted sentence will somehow restore what's already gone. But when a relationship is genuinely broken, defending yourself is like trying to fix a shattered mirror by speaking to it. No matter how sincere your words, the damage doesn't reverse. Broken relationships rarely result from single arguments. They typically emerge from accumulated disappointments, ongoing conflicts, and emotional distance that built gradually. Small cracks expanded into fractures. Fractures deepened into complete breaks. Eventually what once felt solid became fragile, something unstable and unsafe. In those moments, explanations stopped functioning normally. Words that previously might have resolved confusion now bounce off walls hardened by resentment. Apologies that once brought comfort now feel hollow. Even when you're completely honest, the other person might perceive manipulation rather than sincerity. Why? Because trust serves as the filter for all communication. When trust remains strong, even imperfect expressions are received with grace. But when trust has shattered, even kind words are received with suspicion. The relationship itself has become the obstacle, not just the specific issue you're addressing. Imagine trying to grow plants in contaminated soil. It doesn't matter how healthy the seeds are. It doesn't matter how carefully you place them. If the ground is poisoned, nothing will flourish. Similarly, explanations can't thrive in relationships where trust, respect, and emotional safety no longer exist. People often remain trapped in this cycle because they're attached to what was. They remember the connection, the laughter, the bond, the moments that seemed unshakable. Because of those memories, they keep defending themselves, thinking, if I can just make them understand this one thing, we can return to how we were. But sometimes the past remains exactly that, the past. And no explanation can turn back time. When a relationship is already broken, defending yourself often becomes an emotional trap. You start repeating yourself endlessly. You start defending not just individual situations but your entire character. Every interaction becomes a courtroom where you're constantly testifying, trying to prove you're not the villain in someone else's narrative. The exhausting truth is this. Even when you win these arguments, you still lose your peace because the fundamental damage remains, the tension remains, the suspicion remains. You walk away depleted rather than resolved. There's a difficult truth many people resist. Some relationships don't require more explanations. They need space, boundaries, or endings. Not every broken connection is meant to be restored. Some exist to teach you, help you grow, and then let you go. When you keep defending yourself in a relationship that's already emotionally fractured, you're usually just extending the suffering. Silence in these circumstances isn't giving up. It's acknowledging reality. It's recognizing that rebuilding requires two people, not just one person endlessly explaining themselves. Example, imagine a couple with years together. Gradually, small disagreements turned into ongoing conflict. One person feels unheard, the other feels unappreciated. Trust slowly dissolved. Words grew sharper. Apologies became routine without meaningful change. Then one day, conflict erupts over something minor, maybe a forgotten call or changed plans. The conversation quickly shifts to old grievances. You never really care about me. You always twist everything. You're so selfish. You're impossible to satisfy. The person being blamed tries to respond. That's not true. I've been working extra to provide for us. But the reply comes immediately. You're just making excuses. They try again. I'm not making excuses. I'm just telling you what's actually happening. But again, you always say that. You never accept responsibility. Nothing they say lands. Every explanation gets rejected. Every clarification becomes another accusation. The real issue isn't the missed call anymore. It's years of accumulated hurt, distrust, and emotional distance. In that moment, defending themselves doesn't fix anything. It just adds more words to an already overflowing conflict. The actual problem isn't the explanation. It's the broken foundation beneath the relationship. Sometimes the strongest response in a fractured relationship isn't another defense. It's the quiet recognition that this isn't something words alone can heal. And with that recognition, you stop fighting to win arguments and start protecting your peace instead. 4. When the argument lives online. The internet gave everyone a platform. But it also gave everyone an audience, a spotlight, and spectators. Once others are watching, arguments stop being about truth. They transform into performances, ego battles, contests about who seems smarter, wittier, or more dominant in the comment section. This is why defending yourself in online arguments usually means losing from the start. Not because you're incorrect, but because the environment itself isn't designed for genuine understanding. It's optimized for engagement, likes, shares, and emotional reactions. When people argue face to face, human elements exist. You observe expressions. You hear tone and meaning. You notice discomfort, authenticity, or regret. These subtle signals help ground conversations in reality. But online, all of that vanishes. You're reduced to text on a display, a profile picture, a username. When the human element disappears, people find it much easier to be cruel, dismissive, or hostile. Online arguments also carry something dangerous, the illusion of control. Behind a screen, people feel bolder, louder, more certain. They express things they'd never say in person. They interrupt, attack, exaggerate, or misrepresent without hesitation. Since immediate emotional consequences don't exist, the conflict can intensify much faster. But the core reason to avoid defending yourself in online arguments is this. Most participants aren't there to learn. They're there to win. They don't ask questions to grasp your perspective. They ask questions to corner you. They don't read your words to consider them. They scan for something they can extract, distort, or attack. The moment you start defending, you've entered their territory. Online debates typically follow a familiar arc. Someone posts a strong position. Another person challenges it. Soon others pile on. Screenshots appear. Sarcastic responses emerge. Reactions accumulate. Before long, it's not two people discussing anymore. It's a public performance. When you defend yourself in that environment, you're not just addressing one person. You're responding to an invisible audience. Every sentence you type becomes material for others to evaluate, mock, or misinterpret. No matter how carefully you phrase your thoughts, someone will distort them. Someone will respond with mockery. Someone will bypass your main argument and attack some minor detail instead. You might compose a thoughtful, respectful paragraph and someone will reply with a single laughing face. Not because they've proven anything, but because it generates engagement. Here's what many miss. Online arguments almost never end with genuine resolution. There's no handshake, no acknowledgement, no calm agreement. Usually they simply dissipate when someone gets tired, bored, or distracted. Not because anything got resolved, but because the energy ran dry. So what did you actually gain? Wasted time, increased stress, and a comment thread forgotten within days. Meanwhile, your peace paid the price. Another issue with defending yourself online is permanence. Words spoken aloud disappear instantly. Words typed online can persist indefinitely. Screenshots preserve everything. Something said in the heat of a moment can resurface months or years later, completely stripped of context. All of this for an exchange with someone who might not even know your actual name, your actual life, or your actual intentions. Sometimes the most powerful move in an online argument isn't a clever retort. It's choosing not to respond at all. Online silence isn't weakness. It's emotional wisdom. It's recognizing that not every comment deserves your attention, your energy, or your tranquility. Because here's the reality, you don't win online arguments by having the final word. You win by having the last laugh in your actual life while doing something meaningful instead of typing responses to strangers. Example: imagine sharing something simple on social media like consistency and patience eventually pay off. Initially, it's just a reflective thought. Then someone comments, "That's nonsense. Hard work means nothing without luck." You reply politely, "I think both effort and luck play parts." Another person jumps in. Typical privileged mindset. A third adds, "People like you ignore real systemic problems." Suddenly your comment section becomes a battlefield. Strangers start debating your life, your values, and your experiences. Some are sarcastic, some aggressive, some just watching for entertainment. You try to clarify yourself. "That's not what I intended. I respect everyone's challenges." But the more you write, the more responses come. The thread expands, the tone sharpens, and now instead of enjoying your day, you're glued to your screen composing replies to strangers. Hours pass, nothing gets resolved, nobody changes perspective, and you're left exhausted over a conversation that never actually mattered. Now consider handling it differently. You see that first negative comment and simply don't engage. No argument, no emotional investment, no wasted time. You put your phone aside and continue living your actual life. Because sometimes the best way to win an online argument is to never participate at all. 5. When your intentions were genuinely good. Life brings moments when people misinterpret your actions, question your decisions, or even blame you for things that don't reflect your true heart. In those situations, the urge to defend yourself can feel nearly automatic. You want to restore your name. You want to explain your real meaning. You want them to recognize the goodness behind what you did. But sometimes the strongest choice is to do nothing at all. Especially when deep down you know your intentions were pure. Because intention lives somewhere only you and your conscience truly access. Others can interpret your words, your delivery, or your choices however they want. They can speculate, assume, even condemn. But they can never fully access what was in your heart when you made that decision. When you know your motives were honest, kind, or necessary, you don't always need to prove that to the world. Not every misunderstanding demands a defense. Not every accusation requires a speech. Many people spend their lives trying to appear good to others. They explain every choice, justify every action, and overanalyze every word they speak. They become performers in their existence, constantly chasing approval. But that way of living drains you completely. It makes your peace dependent on what others think. True confidence doesn't require universal understanding. It comes from being at peace with your own intentions. When your motives were pure, defending yourself too vigorously can actually backfire. Over-explaining can make you appear like you're hiding something. It can transform a simple misunderstanding into a complicated mess, and sometimes it invites more criticism than silence ever would. There's also a deeper principle here. Not everyone deserves access to your internal reasons. Some people don't want to understand you. They want to judge you. No matter how genuine your explanation, they'll still reshape it into something negative. Defending yourself to them doesn't clear your name. It just depletes your energy. Think of it like this. A clean river doesn't defend itself when someone calls it muddy. It just keeps flowing. Eventually its clarity becomes evident. The same applies to you. When your intentions are good, your actions over time will reveal the truth. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to defend it endlessly. You just need to keep living aligned with who you are. Of course, this doesn't mean you should never clarify your actions. If someone genuinely wants to understand, a calm explanation can be valuable. But there's a difference between conversation and defense. One involves mutuality, the other becomes one-sided. When you find yourself repeatedly explaining the same pure intention to someone who refuses to see it, that's your signal. The issue is no longer your explanation. The issue is their perception. At that point, defending yourself becomes pointless because your conscience is already clear. There's a quiet strength in knowing you did right even when others don't see it. It's the kind of strength that doesn't shout, doesn't argue, and doesn't seek validation. It simply stands grounded in truth. Example, imagine you lend money to a struggling friend. You don't mention it publicly. You don't make it an event. You just help quietly because you genuinely care. Later you discover that friend told others a different version. They claim you pressured them or only helped to appear generous. Suddenly people around you start looking at you differently. Someone even suggests you shouldn't use money to manipulate people. Your immediate impulse is to defend. I didn't pressure anyone. I just wanted to help. But the more you reflect, the more you recognize something essential. You know the truth. You know you helped without expecting anything back. You know your intention was kindness, not control. So instead of arguing with everyone or trying to correct every rumor, you remain calm. You keep treating people with respect. You continue helping where possible. Over time, your consistent behavior speaks louder than any explanation could. Eventually, people notice the pattern. They see your character directly. The truth reveals itself without you ever needing to defend it. Because when your intentions were pure, your peace matters more than making your point. 6. When silence communicates more powerfully. In a world that constantly pushes you to explain, defend, and justify everything, silence can feel awkward. It almost seems wrong. If someone accuses you, your instinct screams to respond. If someone questions you, you feel compelled to clarify. If someone challenges you, you want to demonstrate your position. But life includes moments when words only deepen the problem. Silence becomes the most impactful statement you can offer. Silence is frequently misunderstood. People perceive it as weakness, evasion, or surrender. They assume that if you're not defending yourself, you must have nothing valuable to say. Yet silence can actually signal deep strength. It demonstrates control. It demonstrates confidence. It shows you're not desperate to win every disagreement or prove yourself to everyone, because not every situation deserves your voice. Some situations deserve your absence. There are times when explanations only feed conflict. You speak, they interrupt, you clarify, they distort your meaning, you defend, they accuse you of being defensive. It becomes an endless loop. The more you talk, the deeper you sink into the argument, and before you realize it, you're emotionally depleted over something that never required that much investment. Silence interrupts that cycle. It removes what feeds the fire. It denies the drama the attention it requires to continue. And most importantly, it preserves your peace. Consider people who constantly argue, gossip, or provoke. What do they want most? A reaction. They want engagement. They want a response. They want to know they've reached you. Your silence in those moments becomes your armor. It communicates something without any words. This isn't worth my energy. Silence also naturally reveals truth. When you stop defending, people must examine the situation more honestly. Without argument, noise, and explanations, patterns become visible. Character becomes apparent. Actions begin speaking independently. Sometimes the person accusing you will even expose their own behavior when you don't react. They may become louder, more dramatic, or less reasonable. When that happens, others start seeing truth without you saying anything. Silence also demonstrates self-respect. It communicates that you value your time, your energy, and your emotional health. It shows you're unwilling to argue endlessly just to be understood by someone who isn't trying to understand you. But perhaps silence's most powerful quality is this. It preserves your dignity intact. Words spoken from anger or desperation can cause lasting harm. Once spoken, they can never be retrieved. Silence, conversely, leaves no wounds. It gives you room to think, to breathe, and to select your battles wisely. Silence doesn't mean you lack things to say. It means you're wise enough to recognize that saying them won't change anything. Example, imagine you're at work and a colleague accuses you publicly, saying, "You're always trying to make yourself look superior to everyone else." The room stills. People glance your way, awaiting your response. Pressure builds. Your pulse quickens. Your mind floods with possible responses. That's ridiculous. I've helped you more than anyone. You're just threatened. You could defend. You could argue. You could transform this into a full confrontation right there in the office. But instead, you breathe. You look at them calmly and say nothing. You simply return to your tasks. Initially it feels uncomfortable, but something shifts. The colleague keeps talking, trying harder to get a reaction. Their tone grows sharper. Their words become less reasonable. Gradually others in the room start noticing. What initially seemed like an accusation now looks like unnecessary aggression. Your silence changes the entire dynamic. Instead of two people fighting, it becomes one person complaining while the other remains composed. Later, a coworker quietly tells you, "I don't know what their problem is." You handled that really well. You didn't defend. You didn't argue. You didn't raise your voice. But your silence communicated more than any explanation could have. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing whatsoever. 7. When drama, not truth, is the objective. Some conversations emerge from honesty, curiosity, and genuine desire for mutual understanding. But others emerge from something entirely different. Drama, noise, emotion, attention. When someone wants drama rather than truth, defending yourself becomes a pointless role in a production you never auditioned for. Drama seekers don't want clarity. They don't want resolution. They don't even want fairness. What they want is stimulation. They want raised voices, emotional responses, and situations that keep focus on them. For them, conflict serves as entertainment. The instant you start defending, you become part of their narrative. These individuals often disguise their drama as concern, questions, or accusations. It might sound like, "I'm just trying to understand," or "I only say this because I care." But if you watch closely, you'll notice something significant. No matter how clearly you explain yourself, they keep the conflict alive. They keep pushing, repeating, and amplifying. Not because they need answers, but because they need the drama to persist. It resembles someone repeatedly picking at a wound just to watch it bleed. The wound isn't the problem. The problem is the person refusing to let it heal. When someone seeks truth, conversations move toward resolution. There's listening. There's reflection. There's some degree of calm. Even when disagreement exists, there's sense that both people want clarity. But when someone seeks drama, the conversation moves in circles. Every explanation becomes fresh fuel for argument. Every apology becomes another accusation. Every calm response becomes an invitation for more chaos. You'll often notice certain patterns with drama-driven people. They amplify small issues. They repeat themselves endlessly. They drag up unrelated past events just to sustain tension. They pull others in to create an audience. And when things finally settle, they find something new to stir up again. For them, peace feels boring. Stability feels empty. So they manufacture storms just to feel alive. The biggest mistake you can make with a drama seeker is defending yourself because your defense becomes their fuel. Every explanation you offer becomes another scene in their emotional production. They twist your meaning. They interrupt. They raise their voice. They escalate. Before you recognize it, you're trapped in a cyclone of tension that goes nowhere. You might walk away thinking, "Why does this keep happening?" But the answer is simple. Because they're not pursuing truth. They're pursuing drama. Truth creates closure. Drama keeps everything open. Truth resolves conflicts. Drama extends them. Truth is quiet. Drama is loud. People who crave drama will always prefer noise over resolution. That's why silence becomes your strongest protection in these situations. When you refuse to defend, the drama has nowhere to go. There's no emotional reaction to sustain, no argument to prolong, no tension to amplify. Initially, they may push harder. They might accuse you of ignoring them, being cold, or not caring. But what they're really responding to is losing control. They can't generate the emotional storm they anticipated. Eventually, without your participation, the drama collapses under its own weight. Example: imagine having a friend who constantly stirs conflict. One day they confront you publicly and say, "I heard you've been talking behind my back. Is that true?" You're puzzled. You know you haven't said anything negative about them. So you calmly respond, "No, I haven't. I don't know where you heard that." Instead of accepting your answer, they lean closer and say, "Come on, just be honest. Everyone knows how you really feel." You explain again. "I genuinely haven't said anything about you." But they persist. So you're calling them liars now. Why are you getting so defensive? See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. At this moment, it becomes obvious. They're not trying to discover truth. They're trying to create a scene. They want tension, raised voices, and a dramatic confrontation with witnesses. If you keep defending, the argument will only expand. Voices will rise. Sides will form. The drama will unfold exactly as they want it. But imagine responding differently. You simply state, I've already answered you. Then you physically remove yourself from the situation. No argument, no raised voice, no emotional response. The tension dissolves. The scene never materializes. The drama seeker ends up without the show they hope to create. Because when someone wants drama instead of truth, your defense isn't a solution. It's just another act in their performance. 8. When your actions have already demonstrated truth. Life includes moments when words feel powerful and moments when they feel entirely unnecessary. Because no matter how carefully you explain, some people will still doubt you. They'll still question your motivations. They'll still search for reasons to disbelieve. And in those moments, truth doesn't require your voice. It already has your actions. Actions serve as quiet witnesses to your character. They don't argue. They don't exaggerate. They don't become emotional. They simply exist, consistent and undeniable. While words can be distorted, misheard, or removed from context, actions leave evidence. Over time, that evidence becomes your reputation. This is why defending yourself isn't always necessary, especially when your behavior already communicates the real story. Many people make the error of trying to correct every misunderstanding with explanations. They want to fix every rumor, answer every accusation, and prove every point. But in doing so, they overlook something essential. Consistency communicates louder than any speech ever could. If you've been reliable, people observe that. If you've been kind, people remember that. If you've demonstrated integrity over time, it becomes your identity. When your actions have already built that truth, you don't need to defend it every time someone questions you. Think of it like a tree. A healthy tree doesn't need to announce its vitality. It doesn't argue with people claiming it's dying. Its green leaves, strong branches, and steady growth speak independently. Anyone who looks closely can see the truth without the tree saying a single word. Your life operates similarly. When your actions are consistent, they become evidence. Evidence doesn't need a speech. It just needs time. Over-defending in these situations can actually undermine your position. When you constantly explain, it can appear like you're uncertain of your own truth. It can create the impression that you're trying too hard to convince others. Sometimes the more you talk, the more opportunity you give people to doubt you. But when you stay calm and let your actions communicate, something powerful occurs. People start comparing the accusation with the reality they've witnessed. When those two don't align, truth becomes obvious without you ever needing to argue. Time serves as one of character's strongest defenders. It exposes patterns. It reveals consistency. It separates genuine behavior from empty claims. Anyone can say anything about you. But if your actions over months or years tell a different story, truth will eventually surface. Of course, this doesn't mean staying silent in situations requiring clarification. If a misunderstanding occurs in a professional context or a relationship still containing trust, a simple explanation can help. But when your actions already paint a clear picture, constant defending becomes unnecessary. Sometimes the best response isn't another sentence. It's another example, another day of integrity, another act of kindness, another moment of consistency. Because actions don't argue, they demonstrate. Example, imagine you've consistently been your team's most reliable person. You arrive early, meet every deadline, and support overwhelmed colleagues. Over time, coworkers and supervisors trust you because your actions show dedication and responsibility. One day, a coworker who missed a deadline tells the manager, "The delay wasn't my fault. They didn't send me the information on time." They point at you. Suddenly, blame shifts toward you. The manager looks at you, awaiting explanation. You could immediately start defending. "I did send it. I always meet my deadlines. I would never hold up the project." But then the manager checks records. Email timestamps show you sent the information days earlier. Your track record shows consistent reliability. Your history of meeting deadlines and helping others stands as quiet proof. Without lengthy explanation, truth becomes clear. Your actions already communicated the story. The coworker's claim doesn't match the pattern people have observed from you. Because of that, your reputation speaks louder than any defense ever could. In moments like these, you don't need to argue. You don't need endless justification. You just continue what you've always done, showing up, working hard, and letting your actions continue demonstrating truth. 9. When others project their own struggles onto you. Not every accusation you receive actually concerns you. Sometimes what sounds like criticism is actually a reflection, a mirror, a projection of someone else's fears, insecurities, or internal battles. When someone projects their issues onto you, defending yourself usually misses the point entirely. Projection functions as a psychological defense mechanism. It occurs when someone takes a feeling, flaw, or insecurity they cannot accept within themselves and places it onto someone else. Instead of acknowledging, "I feel jealous," they declare, "You're the jealous one." Instead of admitting, "I am insecure," they blame you for being the problem. It's simpler to point outward than to examine inward. When you don't recognize what's happening, projection can feel deeply confusing. You might find yourself accused of things completely inconsistent with your behavior. You might hear things like, "You're selfish," when you've been giving constantly, or "You're dishonest," from someone who regularly hides truth. Your immediate response in these moments is to defend. You want to explain. You want to correct the false image they're creating. You want to restore your name. But here's the challenge. Projection doesn't concern facts. It concerns emotions the other person hasn't processed. You cannot solve someone else's internal struggle with your external explanation. Imagine someone wearing dirty glasses. No matter how clean the room actually is, they'll still perceive dust everywhere. You could spend hours cleaning, rearranging, and proving how spotless everything is, but while their glasses remain dirty, their perception won't change. The issue isn't the room, it's the lens. Projection works identically. The problem isn't always your behavior. It's the lens through which they're viewing you. People who project often carry unresolved feelings, jealousy, guilt, fear, or insecurity. Instead of confronting those emotions, they transfer them onto others. Usually it's unconscious. They're not always aware they're doing it, but the effect remains identical. You end up defending yourself against something that was never actually yours to carry. The more you defend, the deeper you step into their emotional world. You start explaining things that don't need explanation. You begin questioning your own behavior. You start feeling responsible for emotions that never belonged to you in the first place. That's the trap. When someone projects their issues onto you, defending can actually reinforce their belief. To them, your explanation doesn't appear as clarification. It appears as confirmation. They think, "See, they're getting defensive. I must be right." And the cycle continues. But once you recognize projection, everything transforms. You stop taking the accusation personally. You start seeing the pattern. You notice how their words often reflect their own behavior or fears more than yours. Instead of rushing to defend, you step back emotionally because you understand something essential. Not every criticism requires a response. Some are simply reflections of someone else's internal struggle. Silence in these moments becomes emotional intelligence. It shows that you recognize the difference between your truth and their projection. It shows you're unwilling to carry burdens that don't belong to you. Example: imagine having a friend who frequently cancels plans last minute. They forget commitments, arrive late, or disappear for days without explanation. This becomes a pattern over time. One day, you're busy with work and miss their call. You text back later apologizing and explaining you were in a meeting. Instead of understanding, they respond, "You're so unreliable. I can never count on you. You always disappear when I need you. You're stunned. You've always tried to be there for them. You remember all the times they were the ones who canceled or went silent. So you start to defend. That's not true. I've always supported you. I only missed one call." But they continue. "See, you're making excuses. You never take responsibility." At this point, it becomes clear their accusation doesn't match your behavior. It matches theirs. They're projecting their own pattern of unreliability onto you. If you keep defending yourself, the conversation will only spiral. You'll end up arguing about something that was never truly about you. But if you recognize the projection, you can respond calmly or not at all. You might simply say, "I've explained what happened," and leave it there. No lengthy defense, no emotional argument. Because once you see the projection, you understand the truth. You don't have to defend yourself against someone else's reflection. 10. When emotions have been triggered. There are moments when a single comment, accusation, or tone of voice hits something so deep that staying calm feels nearly impossible. Your chest tightens. Your heart races. Your thoughts begin spinning. Suddenly, you're not just responding to what was said. You're reacting to how it made you feel. That's emotional triggering. It's when a situation touches something sensitive within you, an old wound, a fear, an insecurity, or a painful memory. In those moments, defending yourself is often the worst possible choice. Because when you're triggered, clear thinking disappears. You're thinking emotionally. Your brain shifts from logic to protection mode. Instead of calmly assessing the situation, you're focused on defending yourself from the discomfort you feel. Your words accelerate. Your tone sharpens. You start speaking from hurt rather than clarity. Once that happens, productive conversation ends. Think of your emotions like a storm. During the storm, visibility is poor. You can't see the road clearly. You can't make careful decisions. Trying to defend yourself in that moment resembles driving through a thunderstorm at full speed. The likelihood of crashing is high. Most arguments people regret don't start because of bad intentions. They start because someone got triggered and reacted without thinking. Words get spoken that were never intended. Accusations get thrown. Voices rise, and afterward everyone is left with emotional damage that could have been avoided. When you're triggered, your objective shouldn't be winning the argument. Your objective should be regaining control of yourself. Defending yourself in that emotional state often leads to overreaction. You might exaggerate. You might bring up old issues. You might say something specifically to hurt the other person back. In the moment, it feels justified. It feels like self-protection. But later when emotions settle, you realize something. You didn't actually defend yourself. You just added more fuel to the fire. There's a significant difference between a response and a reaction. A reaction is immediate, emotional, and impulsive. A response is thoughtful, calm, and intentional. When you're emotionally triggered, you're far more likely to react than respond. That's why silence becomes powerful in these moments. Not as avoidance, but as protection. It gives you time to breathe, time to think, time to process what you're actually feeling. It lets the emotional storm pass before you decide what to say. Sometimes the most mature thing you can say in a heated moment is, "I'm not in the right space to discuss this right now." That simple sentence can prevent hours of argument, hurtful words, and emotional harm. Emotional control isn't about never feeling triggered. Everyone gets triggered sometimes. That's part of being human. Real strength lies in recognizing those moments and choosing not to act on impulse. Because defending yourself while triggered doesn't protect your dignity. It often damages it. Example, imagine you've been working intensely at your job for months, trying to prove yourself. You've put in extra hours, taken on additional tasks, and done everything to impress your manager. One day during a team meeting, your manager says, "We need more reliable people on this project." You immediately feel a knot in your stomach. Your mind jumps to a painful memory of being called unreliable in the past. Even though the comment wasn't directed at you, it strikes a sensitive place. You feel heat rising to your face. Your thoughts start racing. Are they talking about me? Do they think I'm not good enough? Without thinking, you speak up. "Well, I've been doing more work than anyone else here, so I don't know why you'd say that." The room goes quiet. Your manager looks confused. "I wasn't talking about you," they say calmly. "I was referring to the missed reports from last week. Now attention is on you." What started as a general comment has become an awkward moment. You feel embarrassed, exposed, and even more emotional than before. Later, you recognize the truth. You weren't defending yourself against the actual situation. You were reacting to a feeling from the past. If you had stayed silent, taken a breath, and waited, the moment would have passed naturally. There would have been no awkward exchange, no emotional reaction, and no regret. Because when you're emotionally triggered, the best defense isn't an explanation. It's a pause. It's a breath. It's wisdom to wait until your emotions settle before you speak. In life, not every accusation deserves an answer, and not every conflict deserves your energy. Sometimes the strongest people in the room are the quiet ones, the ones who know when to speak and when to walk away. Your peace is more valuable than winning arguments. Your character doesn't need constant defense. Choose your battles wisely. Protect your energy and remember, silence at the right moment is not weakness, it's power.